I didn't know that the night my father left me on the side of the road would end with him losing access to my life forever. But God has a way of letting control expose itself. When my dad called me and said we needed to talk, I already felt that tight feeling in my chest, the one that comes when you know somebody's about to say something they've been rehearsing without you. I was 25, pregnant, paying my own rent, my own car note, my own phone bill, and still somehow when his name popped up on my screen, I felt like I was 12 again, standing in the kitchen with my hands folded, waiting to be told what I did wrong. He said it wouldn't take long. Just a drive. Just a conversation. His voice was calm in that way that always meant he thought he had the upper hand. I hesitated, staring at myself in the mirror, smoothing shea butter over my stomach, like I'd been doing every night since I found out. My twist out was wrapped in a satin scarf, my pajamas soft and familiar, my apartment quiet except for the hum of the fridge. I almost said no. Almost. But this was my father, and some small part of me still wanted him to say he was proud of me, or at least stop looking at me like I'd ruined something sacred just by living my life. So I grabbed a hoodie, slipped on my slides, and told myself this was just a talk. The rain had already started by the time he picked me up. Not a cute drizzle, but one of those heavy, sideways rains that make streetlights blur and windshield wipers work overtime. The inside of his car smelled like old leather and the peppermint mints he kept in the cup holder. He didn't hug me, just nodded and pulled back into the street. We drove in silence at first, the kind of silence that isn't peaceful, just heavy. I watched the rain streak down the window and tried to slow my breathing. Eventually he cleared his throat. So, he said, eyes fixed on the road, "You really gonna go through with this?" I didn't pretend not to know what he meant. "I am." He shook his head slowly, like I was confirming something he already believed. "You've embarrassed this family," he said, just like that. No build-up. No concern, just accusation. My stomach dropped, even though I'd heard variations of that sentence before. I stared at him. Embarrassed how? He let out a dry laugh. "Pregnant, unmarried, running around thinking you're grown because you got a little job and an apartment." "A little job?" I repeated, my voice tighter now. "I'm financially independent. I take care of myself." "That's the problem," he snapped. "You think you don't need anybody. You think you don't need guidance." I wanted to remind him that his guidance had mostly been rules without explanations, love with conditions, silence when I needed support. I wanted to say I wasn't asking him for money or permission. I wasn't asking him for anything. But I already knew this wasn't a conversation. This was a verdict. The rain got heavier as we drove farther out, the city lights thinning until there were more dark stretches than bright ones. I glanced at the dashboard, then out the window. "Where are we going?" "Just listen," he said. "You young people always think you know everything. Sometimes fear is the only thing that teaches obedience." That word made my skin prickle. Obedience. He pulled over suddenly, gravel crunching under the tires. We were nowhere familiar. Trees on both sides. No houses. No stores. Just road, rain, and darkness. My heart started pounding. "What are you doing?" I asked. He put the car in park and finally turned to look at me. His face was hard, set. "You need to think about what you've done," he said. "Maybe sitting with it for a while will help." I laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "This isn't funny. I'm not joking." Before I could process what was happening, he reached over, opened my door, and the rain rushed in, cold and loud. "Get out." My body froze. "Dad." "Get out," he repeated. "You want to act grown? Be grown." My throat closed up. "It's raining. We're not near anything." "You got a phone," he said. "Figure it out." For a second, I thought he was bluffing, that he'd scare me, prove a point, then let me close the door and ride home in silence. That's what he'd always done. Intimidation as discipline. But then he unbuckled my seatbelt himself, grabbed my arm just enough to push me toward the open door, and I stumbled out onto the wet gravel. The door slammed. The locks clicked. His car pulled back onto the road, taillights shrinking until they disappeared completely. I stood there, rain soaking through my hoodie, my slides slipping on the ground, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped my phone. For a moment, I couldn't even cry. I just stood there, stunned, listening to the rain pound the empty road, my breath coming fast and shallow. This was my father, the man who used to walk me to school, the man who told people he was protective, and he had left his pregnant daughter on the side of the road, like a lesson. I checked my phone. Signal was weak, but there. My group chat was lighting up about something stupid, a meme, somebody's plate from dinner. Life going on, completely unaware that I was standing in a storm, abandoned. Fear crept in slowly, like water seeping into shoes. What if a car didn't come? What if my phone died? What if something happened to the baby? I wrapped my arms around myself, feeling the cold sink in, and that's when the anger hit, hot and sharp. Not just at him, but at myself for thinking this would be different. Headlights appeared in the distance. I tensed, stepping back instinctively. The car slowed, then pulled over a few feet ahead of me. Not rushed, not dramatic, just calm. The engine idled. An expensive SUV. Clean, black, completely out of place. The window rolled down, and a familiar voice said my name. I blinked, rain dripping down my face. What? He got out of the car, holding an umbrella, moving like this was exactly where he expected to be. I've been trying to reach you, he said gently. You stopped answering. This was the baby's father, the man my dad hated because he couldn't control him, a successful attorney who spoke softly and listened more than he talked. We weren't together in some fairy tale way, but he had been present, consistent, respectful. He'd wanted to be involved from the beginning. He took one look at me, standing there soaked and shaking, and his jaw tightened. What happened? I opened my mouth, and this time the tears came. Not loud, just steady. My dad, I said. He dropped me off. He didn't curse, didn't rant, just nodded slowly, like he was filing information away. Okay, he said. Get in the car. Inside, the heat wrapped around me, the smell of clean leather and something citrusy filling the space. He handed me a towel, then a bottle of water. Take a breath, he said. When I told him everything, his expression didn't change much, but his focus sharpened. He pulled out his phone, stepped back out into the rain for a moment, and made a call. I could hear him clearly through the cracked window, his voice calm and professional, stating facts. Location, time, weather conditions, a pregnant woman abandoned on the roadside. He got back in and looked at me. I documented it, he said. Just in case. In case of what, he didn't say. He didn't need to. As we drove away, I watched the dark road disappear behind us, my body finally warming, my breathing slowing. Relief mixed with grief in a way I didn't know how to separate. Because being rescued wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was realizing that the man who protected me without hesitation wasn't the one who raised me. By the time he dropped me off at my apartment, the rain had softened. He walked me to my door, waited until I was inside, dry, safe. You're not alone, he said quietly. Not anymore. After he left, I sat on my couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at nothing. My phone buzzed once. A text from my dad. Call me when you're ready to apologize. I didn't respond. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his taillights disappearing, heard the rain, felt that moment of disbelief. In the morning, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. I'm glad I didn't. The voice on the other end was calm, official. Papers had been filed. Documentation submitted. Effective immediately, my father was not permitted to approach me or interfere with any decisions related to my pregnancy. I thanked her, hung up, and sat there in silence, one hand resting on my stomach. The pain wasn't in knowing he was restricted. The pain was knowing it took paperwork for me to be protected. And that was only the beginning. I thought the paperwork would make me feel safe right away, like a big invisible shield would drop down around me the second my dad got served. But that's not how it went. The first thing I felt was this ugly, hollow sadness, like my chest had been scooped out with an ice cream spoon and left open to the air. Because a part of me still wanted him to act like my father. Not my warden, not my judge, just my dad. My phone stayed quiet for most of that morning, and that silence was its own kind of noise. I kept expecting it to vibrate, expecting his name to pop up again with another message like, "You embarrass me," or "You made me do this." I paced my apartment in fuzzy socks, rubbing my belly, trying to keep my breathing steady. The rain had moved on, but everything outside still looked washed out, like the sky was tired. Then, right after lunch, my aunt called. Not my sweet Annie who sends you random Target gift cards just because, but my dad's older sister. The one who talks like every sentence is the closing argument in a courtroom she made up in her head. I stared at her name and almost let it ring out. But curiosity got me. And if there's one thing Black families have, it's curiosity wrapped in duty. "Hello," I said. Her voice came through sharp and low. "Now, what is this mess I'm hearing, baby?" I didn't even have the energy to pretend. "What did you hear?" She sucked her teeth like she was tasting something sour. "Your daddy called your uncle, and your uncle called me, and somehow your name is attached to some legal foolishness. He said somebody done put papers on him." I closed my eyes. "Here we go." "He was served," I said. "Served," she repeated, like the word offended her personally. "You put a restraining order on your own father?" "It's not like that," I said, even though it was exactly like that. "He left me on the side of the road during a storm. I'm pregnant." There was a pause. Not a sympathetic one, either. More like she was deciding which story sounded better in her mind. "Your daddy said you got out the car," she said finally. "He said you were acting wild, and he told you to calm down, and you hopped out like you had sense." I laughed, but it came out broken. "That is not what happened." She said, in that way that meant she didn't plan on believing me unless I produced video footage and a sworn statement from God himself. "Well, you know how your daddy is. He old school. He don't play disrespect." I stared at the wall. My plant on the windowsill was still drooping because I'd forgotten to water it for 2 days, and I had this random thought like, wow, even my plant is getting neglected in the middle of this. "I wasn't disrespecting him," I said. "I'm a grown woman. I told him I'm keeping my baby. He didn't like that, so he punished me." "Punished you," my aunt repeated, like I was being dramatic. "He drove me out past the city limits," I said slowly, making sure each word landed. "He opened the door. He pushed me out, and he drove off." Another pause, longer this time. Then she said, "Well, you know we can't have you out here making the family look crazy." I felt something in me snap, not loud, not explosive, just clean, like a thread finally breaking after being pulled too tight for too long. "So the family looking crazy is the bigger issue," I said, my voice calm in a way that surprised even me. "Not the part where he left his pregnant daughter in the rain." She started talking fast then, trying to smooth it over. "You know what I mean. Folks talk. And your daddy." "Tell folks to talk," I interrupted. "And tell my dad he is not allowed to contact me anymore. That's the point." She went quiet, and when she spoke again, her tone shifted into that warning voice aunties use when they're about to invoke church, tradition, and the ancestors all in one breath. "Baby, don't do this. You gon' regret it when he gone." That line used to scare me, used to make me swallow my feelings and reach for peace like it was my job. But that day, all I could picture was him driving away while I stood in the storm. "I already regret what he did," I said. "I'm not regretting protecting myself." I hung up before she could answer, and my hands were shaking, but not from fear this time. From clarity. A little later, my mom came by. She knocked once, then let herself in the way moms do when they feel entitled to the air in your apartment. She looked put together, like she'd taken her time with her edges and her lipstick, but her eyes were puffy. That threw me off. My mom isn't a big crier. She's more of a suck it up and keep moving type. The kind of woman who irons jeans for no reason and keeps a purse full of tissues that never get used. She stood in my living room, clutching her bag like a shield, and said, "Why didn't you call me?" I blinked. I was trying to process, and I didn't know what she would say. She frowned like that hurt her feelings. Then she took a breath. "Your father came home last night in a rage." I let out a short laugh. "I'm sure he did." She shot me a look, and I could see the old dynamic trying to reassert itself. Me as the problem, them as the authority. My body didn't bend to it anymore. "He said you humiliated him," she continued. "He said you sent some man to threaten him." Nobody threatened him, I said. He was served legal papers because what he did was dangerous. My mom's eyes flicked to my stomach. For the first time since she walked in, her face softened. Were you? Were you really out there by yourself? I hesitated, because that question, that tiny crack of concern, made me want to run straight into her arms and cry like I was 10. But I didn't. I couldn't. I'd been disappointed too many times by almost care. Yes, I said. In the rain. In slides. He left me. My mom sat down slowly on the couch like her knees gave out. She pressed her lips together, and for a few seconds, she just stared at her hands. Why would he do that? She whispered, almost to herself. That was the first time anyone in my family said the truth out loud without spinning it. Not you must have provoked him, not you know how he is, not don't make us look bad. Just a simple question that admitted something was wrong with him, not me. Because he thinks he owns me, I said. Because he thinks fear is the same as love. My mom wiped her eyes quickly, like she was embarrassed to be caught feeling. Then she straightened up, and I watched her start to put her armor back on. You could have called me, she said again, firmer. No matter what's going on with your father, I'm still your mother. I nodded slowly. I know, but you've spent my whole life choosing peace with him over peace with me. Her face tightened, and I knew I'd hit something real. That's not fair, she said. I leaned back, letting the silence stretch. It's true. She started to argue, then stopped. Her shoulders sagged, and she looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. I didn't know what to do, she admitted. I didn't want to make it worse. It was already worse, I said quietly. I was just the one taking the damage. My mom exhaled, and then she said something that shocked me. He got served this morning, she said, and he tore the kitchen up, threw his keys, slammed cabinets. He said you're ungrateful. He said you're letting that baby's father run you. I felt my jaw clench. He's not running me. He's protecting me. My mom's eyes searched mine, and for a second I saw her trying to understand a version of love that wasn't built on control. Then she looked away like it scared her. Your father says he wants you to come home, she said, quieter. I laughed again, and this time it was bitter. Come home to what? So he can punish me more? So he can decide what I do with my body. I'm 25, Mom. She nodded, but she still looked torn, like she wanted to defend him out of habit, out of marriage, out of fear of being alone with her own choices. Then my phone buzzed on the coffee table. A number I didn't recognize. A voicemail notification. My stomach dropped. The order said he couldn't contact me directly, but I knew my dad. He was the type to treat rules like suggestions when they didn't benefit him. I tapped the voicemail and put it on speaker before I could overthink it. His voice filled my living room, and it made the air feel colder. You think you've grown, he said, slow and furious. You think you can embarrass me and walk away. You got people sending papers to my house like I'm some criminal. You better fix this. You come see me today. You hear me? You come see me and you apologize. Or I will make sure you regret it. Don't think I don't have ways. My mom's hand flew to her mouth. She stared at the phone like it bit her. I didn't move. I just listened to the last second of his message, the click as it ended, and I felt my whole body go still. My mom whispered, he can't do that. I looked at her. He just did. She stood up fast. You need to call somebody. I nodded. I already know who to call. When I called the baby's father, he didn't panic. He didn't get loud. He asked me to forward the voicemail, asked me the time it came in, and told me to save it in 2 places. Calm, methodical. Like he'd been expecting my dad to test the boundaries. You didn't do anything wrong, he said. And you're not handling this alone. That sentence hit me so hard I had to sit down. Because my whole life, alone had been the default setting. I was the one expected to take the high road. The one expected to be mature. The one expected to understand. I was always the responsible daughter, the peacemaker, the one who could handle it. And in Black families, especially, you get praised for being strong until you realize strong is just the label they slap on you, so they don't have to show up for you. Later that afternoon, he came over. Not with flowers, not with dramatic declarations. He came with a folder, a calm face, and groceries because he noticed my fridge was basically condiments and prenatal vitamins. He moved around my kitchen like he belonged there, but not in a possessive way. More like, I'm here and I'm not leaving. My cousin Nia called while he was chopping bell peppers, and I put her on speaker because Nia is the type to get to the point before you even finish saying hello. Girl, she said, tell me why Auntie Brenda called my mama, and now my mama calling me, and they acting like you done joined the FBI. I let out a real laugh this time, just for a second. It's not the FBI. It might as well be, she said. They talking about legal documents like you stole the church building. I glanced at him, and he raised an eyebrow like, yep, sounds about right. Nia lowered her voice. Okay, for real. What happened? So I told her. Everything. The storm. The road. The way my dad's car disappeared. The SUV pulling up. The documentation. The notice. Nia was silent for a beat, and then she said, oh, he out his mind. Thank you, I said. That's what I've been trying to explain. And let me guess, she added, they blaming you. Of course. Nia sighed. Listen, don't you let them guilt you. You hear me? Because they will wrap that mess up in respect and hand it to you like it's your responsibility. My eyes stung. I know. And another thing, she said, her tone getting sharper. If he left you like that, pregnant, in weather like that, he would do worse if he thought he could. This ain't about discipline. This about control. I swallowed hard. I know. Nia paused, then said, I'm proud of you. I know it don't feel like a win, but you did what you were supposed to do. I didn't cry on the phone, but after I hung up, I went to the bathroom and let a few tears slip out quietly, wiping them away with toilet paper, like I was hiding evidence from myself. That evening, my mom texted me. Just one line, I'm sorry. No explanation. No defense. Just those 2 words. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't know if she meant sorry for not protecting me, sorry for believing him too often, or sorry because now she had to deal with his anger without using me as a buffer. Maybe all of it. I replied, thank you. I didn't add more. Not because I didn't have more to say, but because I was tired of my feelings being treated like a debate topic. The next day, things got loud in the family grapevine. I didn't go searching for it. It came to me like it always does. A cousin screenshot. A church lady's I'm praying for you message that felt more like a warning than comfort. An uncle calling to check in but really fishing for details. My phone turned into a courtroom where everybody wanted to be the judge. Some of them tried to make it funny, too, because that's how our people cope. One cousin texted, so you got your daddy served like a DoorDash order? I almost threw my phone, but I laughed anyway, because the mental image was ridiculous. But the jokes didn't change the truth. The truth was my father humiliated me on the side of a dark road during a storm because I wouldn't obey him. He wanted fear to bring me back. He wanted to remind me that independence didn't matter if he could still scare me into compliance. And the consequence, the final consequence, wasn't a screaming match or a family meeting with everybody talking over each other like the cookout might got passed around. The consequence was simple, silent, permanent. He lost access. Within a week, the order was reinforced because of that voicemail. It wasn't just don't come near her. It became do not contact her, do not send messages through others, do not show up at her job, do not attempt to interfere with medical decisions. The words were clinical, but the power in them was real. The first time it really sank in was when my dad showed up at my apartment building. I wasn't home. I was at a prenatal appointment, and the baby's father drove me. On the way back, my phone started blowing up with notifications from my building's front desk. Apparently my dad came in hot, demanding to see me, saying he was my father and he had a right. The front desk guy, bless his heart, told him, "Sir, she requested no visitors without permission." My dad tried to force it, tried to push past, and the security camera caught the whole thing. By the time I got home, there was already an incident report filed with the building, and my lawyer, because yes, I had one now, even if I still wasn't used to saying that, had the footage requested. When I heard my dad had been standing in my lobby, furious and powerless, I didn't feel happy. I felt relieved, like a door finally had a lock that actually worked. That night, I sat on my couch, eating the soup he'd made earlier, and the baby's father sat across from me, reading through something on his tablet. "You okay?" he asked without looking up. I swallowed. "I'm realizing something." He glanced at me. What? My dad isn't losing me, I said slowly. He's losing control of me. And that's the only part he ever cared about. He didn't argue. He didn't try to soften it. He just nodded like he'd been waiting for me to say it out loud. Sometimes, he said, that's the hardest truth, because it means you stop chasing the version of him you wanted. I leaned back, one hand on my stomach, feeling the baby shift like they were reminding me, we're here now, we're the priority. In the weeks that followed, my life got quieter in the best way. Not easy, not magically healed, but quieter. My dad couldn't call, couldn't text, couldn't send my aunties as flying monkeys without it counting as interference. And once the family realized I wasn't budging, the pressure shifted. People stopped trying to convince me to fix it and started adjusting to the fact that I wasn't available to be controlled anymore. At a Sunday dinner at my grandma's house, because yes, I still went, and yes, the aunties were watching me like I was a new character introduced mid-season. My dad wasn't there. That alone felt unreal. My grandma kept it normal as much as grandmas can. She put food on my plate like she always had, extra mac and cheese, because grandmas don't believe in portion control when emotions are involved. She leaned in and whispered, "You eating? You sleeping?" "As much as I can," I said. She nodded, then said softly, "I heard what happened." My throat tightened. "Yeah." She patted my hand, and her voice dropped even lower. "Your daddy been trying to run that house like it's his kingdom for a long time. Don't you let him make you think you wrong for wanting peace." I blinked fast. "Grandma." She cut her eyes toward the kitchen where my aunts were pretending not to listen, while absolutely listening harder than the FBI. Then she leaned closer and added, "He mad because he can't get to you now. But that's not your burden. That's his consequence." I sat there, holding my fork, realizing something else. For the first time, the whole family structure had to shift because I stopped absorbing the impact. I stopped being the place where everybody's discomfort got dumped. My silence, my boundaries, my paperwork, all of it forced the truth to stand on its own. And the biggest twist, the one that still makes my stomach flip when I think about it, wasn't the legal order itself. It was the way protection showed up in my life from the person people tried to treat like the problem. Because my dad kept saying the baby's father was the danger, the outsider, the influence. But he was the one who stayed calm. He was the one who showed up. He was the one who didn't need to raise his voice to create safety. A couple months later, I got a notification from my job's HR portal about an emergency contact update. I hadn't requested it, but when I logged in, I saw my dad's name had been removed from anything connected to me. It was small, administrative, but it felt like cutting a final string. That night, I wrapped my hair in my satin scarf, rubbed cocoa butter over my belly, and stood in front of my mirror. I looked tired, but I also looked free. Not fully healed, not untouched by what happened, but no longer trapped inside a story where my father was the narrator. He tried once more through my mom, weeks later, sending a message like a command, tell her to come talk to me. This has gone on long enough. My mom texted me and asked what I wanted her to say. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered, and I typed back, "Tell him no. Tell him I'm safe. Tell him I'm done." She responded with a single word, "Okay." No argument. No guilt trip. Just okay. That was the moment I knew the quiet retribution had landed where it needed to. Not in a viral spectacle. Not in a family blow-up that would have left me drained and still unprotected. But in a steady, undeniable shift. My father humiliated me on a stormy roadside because he wanted to scare me into obedience. The expensive SUV that stopped didn't bring drama, it brought documentation. And the final consequence wasn't that my dad got embarrassed by gossip. It was that he lost the right to reach me at all. He didn't lose a daughter because we fought. He lost access because he proved he couldn't be trusted with it.